Hi, and welcome to the skill development video that focuses on constraints analysis. If you're watching this video, it's likely that at least part of this course needs to be delivered using recordings of a previous skill building presentation. The recording you're about to view consists of clips of in-person explanations that were recorded in a previous STEM class. While the quality is not the greatest, the advantage over other distance methods is that it captures the action live. Before each clip, you can expect to see a short PowerPoint slide that explains the content of the clip and the key points to be gained. In this video, there are 9 segments that have been clipped out of the previous class recording. These contain the key information. The idea is to use the introductions and the clips to gain the knowledge and understanding that will be needed for you to move toward mastery of constraints analysis. The core reason that constraints analysis is so helpful is that it can be used to reduce informational uncertainty. Here's the logic. We have a technology, that's an invention, but it's not yet commercialized. One of the reasons it's still on the shelf is informational uncertainty. Informational uncertainty shows up as something called bounded rationality, which means that as people, we can't know everything, and even if we could, we're not able to process it. Constraints analysis is a skill that enables us both to know more and to process it. By using constraints analysis, thereby knowing more and processing it, we reduce informational uncertainty and increase value. This release of value is possible because there is inherent value in human relationships, most of which does not emerge due to informational, relational, and resource uncertainty. Thus, when we reduce informational uncertainty, the inherent weighted value naturally emerges. So here's what you're going to see in this video. In this video about constraints analysis, we have 9 segments of varying lengths, and 4 of these will be key skill elements. So watch for 5, 6, 7, and 9. However, segment 1 really provides a summary to date, the core ideas that build the foundation for this skill. Segment 2 is a proof. It's called the digit span exercise. You recall that informational uncertainty is manifest as not being able to know everything, and even if you could, you couldn't process it. So this exercise is experiential to prove that point. Segment 3, the example case of the Company, shows the exact results of a real company and how a current reality tree can make a huge difference. Segment 4 is somewhat optional. It shows how the class picked the common topic, the one that they decided to analyze, and that was lack of critical thinking skills. So it may be of limited interest. It's 14 minutes, but it shows how the class ended up with that topic. Okay, so then this is segment 5, the situation statement generation. It's the first key skill element. It really covers the know more part. Segment 6, current reality tree construction, is the second key skill element. It covers the idea of processing it. Segment 7 is the third key skill element. It actually is how you identify the constraints from the current reality tree and shows that clearly. Then segment 8 kind of takes a step back to help the class integrate into the big picture, kind of ties things in. It's only 6 minutes, not essential, but it allows you to see how this skill ties into everything we're doing in this class. And finally, segment 9, the change plan analysis, only 4 minutes long, is the fourth key skill element. And you will need to understand how change plans work for each of the skills that we use in technology commercialization. So this is segment 1, our summary to date. Segment 1 summarizes the course to date in 4 sections. We review commercialization, what we're calling the yellow brick road. We review Federal Reserve operations from our prior class, how money is moved into and out of the economy. How this class session fits learning objective 1, solving unstructured problems. And then number 4, the introduction of key concepts, which is an explanation of how informational uncertainty shows up as bounded rationality, and how constraints analysis reduces uncertainty from bounded rationality. The next skill, I'm going to do a little lead up to it, explain the skill, why it's necessary, and etc. So, why are we doing it? The yellow brick road, which is how, the 5 steps, commercialization. Every after-class quiz has something about this, so it's worth kind of internalizing, right? So we choose a technology, we create new value units. That's what we do here. And what's a new value unit? It is an exchange. An individual creates a work for others, okay? And so after that comes cash flow, selling the product or service, raising equity, obtaining debt, and then creating currency. And how does the currency actually get into the economy? There's this really cool Dairy Queen. Well, no, it's called the Federal Reserve, but it's a private entity, not owned by the government. Okay? Some people are appointed, like governors, chair or whatever, but it's not owned by the government. And to get money into the economy, they do have interactions. Their main customer is the government. Why? Because they, on the third way of getting currency into the economy, they buy and sell treasury bills, which essentially is government borrowing money. So if you want to get money into the economy, Karishma, if you want to get money into the economy, what does the Fed do with treasury bills? Travis, if you want to get money in the economy, what does the Fed do with treasury bills? It buys them. And where does it get the money? It prints it. And why are they printing money? Because somebody created the value and they're trying to be sure that there's enough currency to back up the value that's actually been created. Okay, and the other 2 ways of getting currency into the economy are
interest rate.
the discount rate and the reserve requirement. Okay? It's a trick question. If they lower the reserve requirement, that's not the trick question. If they raise the reserve requirement, it sucks money out of the economy because the bank has to keep it in reserve. Can't loan it. Okay? And if they want to suck money out of the economy, what do they do to the discount rate? They raise it. And the discount rate links to the prime rate. Okay, so the banks can only borrow from the Fed. So that's where they get their money to be sure that they've got their reserve. Is that a question, James?
Yes, so I'm still kind of confused on T-bills. So like, if the government wants to have more money...
The government doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay. The government just has to pay its bills to do whatever Congress says it's going to do.
Okay. So
and they just go out and they want to borrow money.
Okay. Who owns the T-bills then?
Well, when the Fed buys them, they own them.
Okay.
And they're sitting in the vault.
Okay.
Or, but you can buy them.
Yeah.
I had a client once who, every month he bought a jumbo, $500,000 T-bill. So he was one of the guys that was financing the debt. Okay? He just was making cool money. Okay? Yeah, and it's what, right? Yeah.
Getting the money into the economy, the Fed is buying.
It buys T-bills, that's right, and prints the money to do it. And then the government gets the money and it spends it on who knows what. Okay? $9,000 wrenches, whatever. Okay? So, Ripper's laughing. Okay, so, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so, yellow brick road, right? So here's the background. Commercialization requires us to create new exchanges. It's hard, but it's not impossible. But it is an unstructured problem. So because there's inherent value in human relationships, and much of the value doesn't emerge due to uncertainties, then what we do to structure the unstructured relationship. Like there's value just driving up and down the street, and all the people are just out there, and there's a lot of it's just not emerging. Not. Because of three uncertainties. And if we decrease those uncertainties, we increase exchanges. Now, is that highly abstract? Yeah. That's why you stepped off the treadmill and went into Think World, master's program, so that you can figure out what the underlying way stuff works. So our big job is just to look at all the mess that's out there and map it onto structures that allow us to decrease these three uncertainties. We're getting clearer and clearer about this, right? So, three skills help us decrease the uncertainty, and when we deal with informational uncertainty, that's this one, there's something called bounded rationality. Now, I've used the term before, and the working definition. Okay, so some guy won a Nobel Prize for this in 1979. It's Herbert Simon. Bounded rationality means Allie can't know everything, and even if she knew it, she couldn't process it. Brilliant though she is. Matthew the same. Ron the same. Karishma the same. We can't know everything, and even if we knew it, we couldn't process it. Boundaries to our thinking processes, our rationality. Okay, like I don't make these terms up, right? They get the Nobel Prize for making up the buzzwords. But you came to graduate school to learn what everybody's buzzword is so that, oh gee, when you show up and you're the boss, you use the words that nobody understands and they go, ooh, that's Sean, he's smart. Okay, because he knows why stuff works. Okay? Has mastery of business administration. So bounded rationality. You can't know everything, but even if you knew it, you couldn't process it. So, here's our challenge, guys. We've got to figure out a way to what? That's the second part.
Know everything.
Know everything. Possible to know everything? Well, no, but a whole lot more than Ron knows by himself, or Zach by himself, or, okay, I'm going to say this just to learn it, Shambhavi. Did I get it? Okay, Shambhavi knows by herself. So, we need a skill that helps us to do those two things. Now, in some respects, what you do when you hire professors is you hire personal shoppers for ideas, right? Because if you just came here to improve your mind. Like, you know, maybe you work out at the gym and we're going to improve, you know, our physical health and whatever. You know, maybe we work over, you know, at the cafeteria and we deteriorate our physical. I'm just saying that it's the mind structuring, the learning that we're all doing here. That's why we showed up. And so it's essentially knowing mind and processing mind. With me? Yeah. Okay, so what we need are planning skills, which decrease informational uncertainty by overcoming bounded rationality, knowing more, and processing it. So the constraints analysis skill, the thing you read about, an old quiz. By the way, everybody's doing better, 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 better. Like half the class, perfect score, right? So keep it up. Okay, so you read about this from It's Not Luck. Did I have you read the whole book? No. Why? Because My job's not to waste your time. My job is to figure out the most efficient way to get cool stuff into your head so that you can do serious work at decreasing the three major uncertainties and thereby create new value units. That's it. And then the presses run longer simply because you got up in the morning. Okay, so here's our agenda. 4 parts. First, I'm going to demonstrate personal digit span. Why? This is proof time. It's essentially knowing and processing. Okay, what's that? It's about our mind. We have something called working memory, and it's like counter space. So much stuff you can put on the counter. It's a pretty big counter, but after you get a pile of stuff, if we just have like something in, I don't know, say your storage unit, eventually stacking on the counter stuff will start to fall off, just like working memory. So much can stay in, and then stuff starts falling off. Okay? Then we're going to do the current reality tree method. And what I'm going to show you is the reverse engineered version of what you read. There's some terms that we're going to improve, and there are some processes that were talked about that are really fumbly, bumbly, and whatever, designed by the guy who wrote the book to be sure that he can charge $10,000 per week per person to teach them that. Crosby Institute, Florida. So like 2 hours from now, you're going to know this skill. No $10,000 per person per week, no whatever. But what we do is strip the whole thing down to the bare bones, and then we'll just learn what we need to know to use this skill. Current reality tree method. Then we'll do an analysis here. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to pick something that all of us know something about. Well, that means, well, let's see, Cameron knows more and Megan knows more, but each of us know our own bit. But when you put us all together, it's like, the way the personal computers get put into series and become a supercomputer. It's kind of like we know more and can process it. Okay, so we'll do an exercise together, and then we'll do, if there's time, a change plan analysis, and I'll just have you hand that in. Okay? But everything that we will have done from CRT analysis is going to just fit on that change plan form. Okay? And you just hand it in. It's not for credit as much as it's for me to be sure that you're just communicating. You got it. Right? I got this. Okay, so ready for the digit span exercise? Digit span. Okay, so what's a digit? It's a number. 2, 99, etc. What a digit does, it's complex enough that it can take up an actual space in your working memory. And as we put digits in our working memory, we eventually get to the point that the span is too large and stuff starts falling off. Now, why are we doing the digit span exercise? Because it's one thing for a professor to say, oh, you can't know everything, and even if you knew it, you couldn't process it. It's another thing to actually live it enough to say, oh, okay, I get it, there's a barrier, I've got to solve it, etc. So, everybody take out a writing implement and something to write on. You don't have to hand this in, you don't have to show anybody. This is just you proving stuff to you. And by the way, off topic, when we have our break, every one of the non-disclosure agreements, the 2-way confidentiality, Mr. McClure has signed these, and they're right here for you to pick up and just keep in your file, okay? What you signed, what he signed.
Segment 2 is a proof. Specifically, a proof that bounded rationality really exists. That is, you can't know everything, and even if you did, you couldn't process it. In segment 2, we come to understand some of the value of constraints analysis in reducing informational uncertainty.
Okay, everybody got a paper and a pencil. Pen. Writing implement. So guys, the reason paper and pencil were invented is so that we can have a larger substitute for our working memory. So when I read these digits, we're not going to write them down. We're going to wait. And after I'm done reading the digits, in as neutral a voice as I can read them, then you write them down. See, that basically looks at the digit span in your own working memory. Everybody ready? Okay. 2, 14, 3, 20, 61. Ready for the next one? 17, 25, 34, 88, 103, 5, 13, 66. Yeah, relying on somebody else's working memory is kind of what we're going to do. Okay, next one. 6, 16, 28, 49, 51, 9, 37. Next one. 14, 20, 25, 88, 5, 13, 16, 66, 24, 34, 44, 71, 21, 57. Okay, so the first one had 5 digits. 2, 14, 3, 20, 61. Everybody probably got that.
Say it one more time, sir.
2, 14, 3, 20, 61. The next one, 8 did. It did 8 digits. 17, 25, 34, 88, 103, 5, 13, 66. Next one had 7. 6, 16, 28, 49, 51, 9, 37. And the last one had 14. Got the big laugh. Okay. 14, 20, 25, 88, 5, 13, 16, 66, 24, 34, 44, 71, 21, 57. Okay, so what did we just learn? We learned that we have working memory, and it has a particular capacity, just like counter space. And we showed when we read the 14 one, with the exception of very few people, we ran over all of our digit span. Generally in graduate school, digit spans are roughly 7 to 12. The digit span in America is 3. Just look at the concepts that are in ads. Okay? 7, kind of a phone number, can sort of remember it. Okay, the highest digit span ever recorded was a young woman in California, had a digit span of 22, and she played 2 or 3, 4 instruments like violin, guitar, She spoke 5 languages. She graduated from high school in her early teens, had her doctorate by the time she was 19. What's that about? That's about having this massive capacity to keep everything straight all the time. Okay, so
is pi considered just one digit then?
that's why they invented pi. Yeah, 1, 4, 1, 3, never repeating ever. Yeah, so we have. It's interesting you should ask it that way, Travis, because that's exactly why we have developed thinking processes that enable us to deal with working memory limitations. In unstructured problems, the informational uncertainty problem, that unstructured is we can't know everything. I mean, even if it were like pi and we could read it and continue reading it forever and ever and ever and ever, okay, we couldn't process it in the sense of somebody's got. Are there people who have gotten way down the rabbit hole of pi? Yeah, okay. But remarkable in that way, and also in very other interesting behavioral ways, right? So just gotta be tactful about that. But, you know, it's just like we're all our own. But the point is we can't know everything, and even if we knew it, we couldn't process it. Okay, so we've got this digit span thing, and we need to figure out how it is that we know more and process it.
Segment 3 is an example case, the Company. We use a real-world example to illustrate 2 points: how to create a current reality tree and the impact that a constraints analysis had on this company and on the financial results for the owner. Through segment 3, we come to see how the results of the analysis we create can be used to help you to solve informational uncertainty problems in the commercialization of your technology.
So enter the current reality tree method. What we do is we take some situation that we know a lot about, and then we put down, now I know in the reading it said undesirable effects, UDEs. It was on the quiz, if it randomly kicked out that question. Okay, so the point is that being a social scientist, I'm kind of bothered by anchoring, like stating something negatively, undesirable effects. I mean, it's just sort of really, it's about what's going on. So I'm going to ask you to unplug that UDE concept in your mind and plug in situation statement. Okay, so when we do a current reality tree, we're just going to generate situation statements. And then we're going to link them together based upon an underlying logic that says because of A, B happens. Now, so far so good? Don't know everything, can't process. However, we have a way to do that. That is, we list all the situation statements, and where do they come from? Well, some of them are in my mind, but not all of them. But by the time we get everybody, we know a whole heck of a lot more. Everything? Maybe not, but a ton. And then we process them using the logic, because of A, B happens. With me so far, right? Okay, time for a real-world example. So, and if you don't mind, some of these are just out of my consulting career. So, personal examples, I'm not trying to flog you with them. I'm just trying to say, got a real experience with this, and here's what happened. So, I was consulting with the company, and the company is the Company. And my friend, I was brought in to figure out why their gross revenue was about 10 million a year and was not varying. 11, 9, 10, 8.5, 12. Basically, constrained somehow. So, I was in the doctoral program at the time. I'd already practiced as a CPA. I figured, I got this. Now, it wasn't like they were paying tons, okay? So it was like $1,000 a day plus expenses back in the day. But it was enough to support somebody who had a family that's going through grad school. So I'd go to the Company and I'd say, you know, we ought to do an assessment center because then that way we'll figure out everybody's strengths and weaknesses. So we did that. Well, we ought to analyze our physical facility because, you know, like the engineers are all in one place and the salespeople are on another, and it's really not a really good team, you know. We just have, and we analyzed, and what was happening? 10 million, basically, going on. 5 years I was doing this. Did the company get better? Oh yeah, it had better understanding of each other's jobs. They moved to a new facility. Beautiful open space, glass wall, conference rooms. Okay, so cool is cool. But the problem was, it wasn't changing. Okay, so, I'm running out of voice, so I've got to turn this thing on. Okay, so, I'll try not to boom too loud, okay, but, voice is going. Okay, so we got everybody in the room in that company who knew something about that company, the MM company. The receptionists who answered the phone, the person on the loading dock, the marketing VP, the people who answered the sales calls, the engineers, just like a bunch of them. Maybe there was a dozen, 15 people. Now we got a few more than that here today. But generally it was kind of a know everything. So here's what we found. Okay, so this is on Blackboard. So you can have it if you ever need to do this. Now, why do I say you might need to do this? Because you came here to be a master. And what I'd like you to do is put yourself in my shoes. That is, you are talking to a team of people in a company who have informational uncertainty and they can't solve the problem. So I've taught this for quite a few years. And I've had students go on internships and ended up getting low six figures jobs because those companies were constrained and they sort of had to come up with, maybe I learned how to do this thing called constraints analysis because we tried and it worked for them. Okay, so essentially what we did was we made a list of all called them UDEs at the time because I didn't know that we could just call them situation statements, but I know now. So we could call them situation statements. 23 of them. So even the magical young woman who has a digit span of 22 couldn't keep all of these in her head. Can't know everything, can't process it. And then we did a current reality tree. Ugly as it is, because of A, B happens. Yeah. And you know what happened? We found the constraint. In a second, I'll tell you what it is. And as a result of finding, there were 2 or 3 constraints, maybe 4. Some things you can change, and other things are just states of nature. You can try all you want, but basically, in Canada, it gets cold in the winter. It's like, we're going to change that. It's going to be Hawaii. Well, no. Okay, so some things are just, if they end up being a constraint, and how can you tell a constraint? When you do the bubble chart, because of A, B happens, there's no arrow coming into some of those A's. They're actually running the whole mess. Okay, so as a result of this analysis, like the very next year, it was like 17 million in sales. And the year after that was like 30-some. And then it was 50s to 70s. And then it was, I worked a few more years there, but they were blowing through 100 million. Now my friend could keep 20% of sales. That's essentially in sole proprietorship. He owned it. And so at 10 million, he was taking home $2 million a year. And we got to know each other really well because, I was consulting there every month for a long time. Improving the company as we went, but not changing the sales till we did this. So $2 million a year, he had a yacht. We could go, lobster fishing and all kinds of cool stuff with our families. We did all of that. Rich guy stuff. But when he was 100 million, he could take home 20%, which is double the gross of what he had when he was constrained. Okay, so guys, here it is. Oh, just one more thing. Look at that. I'll just explain. The MM company made coreless motors. I know that most of us are biologists here, but essentially a coreless motor like most motors have like a shaft and a winding around it. And then they have magnets and they have brushes. And essentially when you put the current in, it charges such that the magnet, the winding, becomes kind of inversely charged to where the magnets are. And the magnets are always trying to escape, and they just roll. Okay, so, and there's a problem with motors that have a really heavy winding, and it's called inductance. That's not a quiz. Okay. Inductance means it's like friction. It's like the inertia that's in the deal. So even if you put a ton of electricity into a motor, regular motor, it just sparks off the brushes because the thing is going to spool up only so fast. Okay, well, my friend's dad invented the coreless motor. Nice little round aluminum cylinder with really fine winding. And so what could happen is you put the current to it, and because there was very low inertia, it just spool up. Or it would stop really fast. So start and stop. Then the sparks and shocks. You got this really efficient motor, coreless motors. So just one little story. I was in the office one day and was interrupted by the personal assistant of my friend. He said, the vice president of Energizer Battery is on the phone for you. What? Excuse me, let me take this call. So he took the call. Really? Oh, that's great. Thanks. Okay, so what did he hear? The guy from Energizer was thanking him for the beautiful high-efficiency motor that they put in the Energizer Bunny. The Duracell Bunny had the old, inefficient motor. And so, of course, the Energizer Bunny keeps going and going and going. Okay, so that's what was going on in those commercials. Just saying. Okay, so you take the leadership and ethics. Is that really ethical? Well, point was, that's the explanation for the Energizer Bunny. So, so these coreless motors then were made, they were invented over in Germany, so they're made in Germany and Switzerland, and they were adapted to all kinds of uses. So this is what we learned. So I had one of those whiteboards. You could push a button and a piece of paper came out with everything that was written on that. That's what was written, and I got permission to use it for teaching. Right? So, by permission, the MM company is telling you, here's what was going on. It takes too long to quote. Let's quote. Well, somebody calls up, just say, Zachary's one of the application engineers. They call it salespeople engineers because. And then Zach's trying to figure out how it is we're going to charge, what we're going to charge, how many, etc. And by the time he got through the whole bureaucracy at the MM company, the customer was just bored. Okay, so I'm going to go faster on this. Okay, so the product can't be built as designed. Why? Because Zach finally puts the pressure on them and they design the thing, and it's not really the best design yet. The customer is unhappy because we've got to charge more. It takes too long to close design. Not enough time to build. Not enough information obtained from the customer. The quotes aren't accurate. So there's a big actual minus quote difference. Can't determine the real assembly times. The customer complains because the product doesn't do what we thought it would do. So these motors go with like everything from space shuttles to heart rings. Like they're like 1.5 millimeters to about 30 millimeters. Sensormatic cameras in stores. Okay, the vendors take too long to quote. The lead time's too long. The customer, after they accept it, then they say, oh, how about getting this, right? Too labor intensive. The information system's inadequate. Quotes are done on spec. It means that when somebody calls up, Zach makes a quote, and you can't say, I'm only going to quote if you'll buy. Well, I can only buy if you'll quote. Well, not everybody buys. Fully specified quotes, not always realistic. The sales engineers don't have enough time to get into the details. Sometimes customers don't release information. The prototype quantities become production quantities without control. Why? Because it took too long and the customers got to have them, right? You can't say no to customer requests, right? That's Remember, first class we learned the first rule of business is buy low, sell high. Yeah, the second rule of business is the customer is always right. And if the customer is wrong, see that primary rule. So you can't say no to customers, otherwise you don't stay in business. MM's not happy, the customer wants stuff the vendors won't do. Right, so the physical limits, people still want perpetual motion, even though, as of yet, we haven't quite figured that out. Okay, so, your job, look at those. Which ones are the constraints? What's driving the whole mess? Okay, why am I asking you? Because I'm asking you to put yourself in the shoes of the consultant who's been watching this for 4.5, 5 years, and trying to fix all this stuff, and yet didn't have his finger on the real pulse. So what do you think the real pulse is? Tell us more, Cooper. Which one are you thinking? Just give us the number. 9, customer complaints? Or is it can't say no to customer requests?
Can't say no.
Okay, can't say no to customer requests. Absolutely, it's a constraint. Is it driving the whole mess? How can we tell? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I couldn't go, hey, stop saying yes to customers. Huh. Right, so, really important. James, what do you think?
Maybe
13. Okay, that's customer enacts changes after acceptance. Yeah, so, like the moving target, right? Man, we're gonna get this done when the target keeps moving.
Yeah.
Also important. Is it the key, is it the constraint? Yeah, Matthew?
I would say 1.
It takes too long to quote. That's right, how are you gonna stay in business? Okay, so you guys are just like I was. Just looking and looking and looking and looking. And do I have a digit span of 23? No, I mean, if I really, really, really work and practice, I can get mine up above 10, maybe 11, 12. But on an exercise like we did today, I'm in the 6 or 7 or 8 range, just like most people who attended graduate school. Okay, so here's your copy of this. As I say, it's on Blackboard. Just pass those back somehow. And on the other side is the current reality tree that we produced. Okay, so because of A, B happens. Okay, so, I mean, is it pretty? No. Was it worth 20 million a year bottom line to my buddy? Oh yeah, it was. Okay, so it doesn't have to be pretty to be helpful. Okay, so A, B, and C looks like. The information system is inadequate. B, quotes are done on speculation. C, the customer wants stuff the factories won't do. All right, so now you've got that. Yeah, James, go ahead.
Where did you start?
Oh, interestingly, we're going to do that in just a second. You just list all of the situation statements, and then you get the giant supercomputer, the common quotes, and any two that are connected on the because of A, B happens, you just connect them, and then connect them, and then connect them, and connect them, and connect them, to the point that the ones with no arrows coming into it just start to be the ones with no arrows coming into it. And later, as you get farther down the road, you try and make sure that some trivial arrow doesn't get stuck into something that's emerging as a major issue. Okay? So you start anywhere, really. Just any two, because of A, B happens. So guys, you can read the book, It's Not Luck, and it will be sort of more confusing than this. This is stripped down, as I said, to the bare wires. It is all you do. List the situation statements, connect them, and identify A, information system's inadequate. B, quotes are done on spec. C, the customer wants stuff the factories won't do. And everybody says, well, I want to work on this, or I want to work on that. Fine. But the fact that they're a primary constraint means that unless you work on that, you're always going to have some fly landing in your soup. It's not always going to work. Okay, so next thing you do is you divide the constraints you've identified, A, B, and C, into the ones you can change and the ones you can't. So, can you change the information system from inadequate to adequate? Yeah, we can do that. Can you change the fact that you have to quote even if somebody won't guarantee to buy? No, that's pretty much how business is done. So no, that's going to be the way it is. Okay, and can you change the customers always wanting stuff that can't be produced? Yeah, people always, just always want something more. Right? So you only change one of them, the information system. And it took 3 years to get that information system put in. But as I told you, the year after we did this, we ended up with 17 million. We didn't even have an information system. Or did we? Because we had all the people who were in the middle of it, and they knew that the information system was the issue, they all just started talking to each other. Hey, you need to know this. Oh, by the way. So, what was, you've seen an hourglass, right? The choke point. The choke point just opened up and sand just started flowing through. Now, when they got that full information system, well, dang, right? So, so that's the MM story. Why do I tell it to you? There are others, like the technology commercialization thing. You met Mr. McClure? 380-some thousand when we started doing the project. He just reported $1.7 million a year in license income. We figured out what the choke points were, and the regions just started changing every one of them. And we just have more commercialization going. In fact, we have so much commercialization going that we can put real live commercialization cases into the STEM MBA and have it be way less hypothetical and way more practical. It's why you see on Blackboard that every class that we do is do, look, learn. Okay, so just a word about that. We're about to connect on that. So all this was an example that said do, look, learn. Set us up for doing. Okay, so quarter after. So that short break bit that we did before, that worked really well, like the 5 minutes, and we can have more breaks that way. Would you guys be willing to do another short break while I get set up, and then we'll do a current reality tree for something that we're the supercomputer about. Demo how it's done. Oh, and one, I think it's a caution, but maybe it's a plea for me. Okay, when we start doing the because of A, B happens, it is so boring that you'll just feel this overwhelming urge to get on your device and do anything but keep doing it because it's repetitive and dull, dull, dull. So I'm just going to say, please just sort of put the self-discipline, sort of like, I don't know, gear in place. And try on that. I'm just saying, it's always boring. Like there's no way to make it interesting. It's just, I got to plead with you, hang in there. Because if you do, it actually goes faster.
Segment 4 demonstrates how a practice topic is selected in 2 steps. First, we generate a list that most class members can know about and discuss the situation and make a selection using a priority voting system. Through segment 4, we can envision how to gather a group of people who can be most helpful in knowing more and processing it. This is one that you can kind of skim if you need to. Yes, it's true that in our case, we're not yet the group that knows a ton and we're expert on our technology, so the situation statements will reflect the missing information. But we need to get it somehow, and we'll start with a meeting with the inventor.
Okay, so 5 minutes from now, we're going to start with a current reality tree, but first we'll have to decide on the issue, and we'll do that really quickly. I figured out a really efficient way to do that so that we can identify it quickly. Okay, so see you in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, so here are a few ideas. Something that we would know enough about that we could track down what's driving these issues, okay? Smartphone negatives, the lack of critical thinking in society. These are just pump primers, right? You don't have to pick those, see all the blanks? Customize, right? Linear career assumptions. I'm going to start out as the bank teller, then I'm going to be the head teller, then I'm going to be the assistant manager, then I'm going to be the manager, then I'm going to be the vice president, then I'm going to be the regional vice president, then I'm going to be executive vice president, then I'm going to be the president. Linear career assumptions. Okay? Increasing distance between rich and poor. Study procrastination. Works for me. So what other issues are there that we know a lot about? That you'd be interested in figuring out what the heck's driving the whole mess?
Employers wanting fresh college graduates who have 5 years of experience already.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to word that though.
Okay.
Chicken
Can I be really nasty but true?
Go for it.
Okay. Hypocrisy. Right? Say one thing, want another. Okay? That's the 5-year experience deal.
And the rising price of college education.
Yeah. Student debt.
That's debt now.
Student debt crisis, rising cost of higher ed.
Inefficiencies of government. This is true, but like, how does that work?
I shortened government, okay.
I don't know if you want to bundle like social media negatives with smartphone negatives, 'cause that's certainly.
Yeah, social media is kind of a different thing, you know, like a smartphone has its, anyway, I think that's something there, yeah, James.
I don't really know how to like word this in a short phrase, but like the more difficult it is to become more rich. Like with tax walls and things of that sort, like it's the more rich you are, the faster and higher you are taxed. So things like that, like I don't know how to really like describe that in like a really short way, like I get maybe discriminate. I don't know. Talking about this. I'll think about it. I'll think about it.
Well, it's not just taxes, it's really the whole,
Yeah, like it's almost like getting into a whole new society. Like, I guess I don't know. It's kind of true.
so are you thinking, James, about mobility, like barriers to economic mobility?
Yeah, like so, like yeah, for like economic mobility, because like it's not like you can all of a sudden just win $1 million and consider yourself to be like a true millionaire, like because that stuff's more or less taxed away very quickly. Like it takes a lot of time, effort, and like I don't know, hard work to get to that point. Yeah, and what too?
Fall under the
Just saying socialism in general.
No, no, no. Socialism is never the answer.
Problems. Well, no, that's the problem. We're
Yeah.
having problems up there.
It's problems.
Oh, this is
That's capital.
I got mixed up. I was reading. Okay, never mind.
Now.
You want to change it?
Burnout, just from overworking yourself.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's really, burnout's the result of overwork, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. The way economic stuff moves is that you have to feel like there's never enough, right? Whiter teeth, fresher breath, newer car, something, you know, never enough. Right? So you're always behind the curve. That's 2, 4, 12 of them. Anybody have any others you want to put up there? I can put them below if you want. Okay, so everyone pick 3 that you would think would be interesting enough to discuss. We're just going to spend an hour on it today, maybe an hour and a half, right? So, one of my big goals is not to waste your time, okay? So that's why we're going to sift this down to the point that it's something you'd want to do. So pick the 3 that you would be interested in doing, and then when I read it, just put up your hand and I'll count the hands, and then we'll pick the one that has the most. 3 enough? You want 4? And then it'll be 3. Okay. Pick your 3. Right, because this is just for our demo, so we can see how situation statements get generated and how we connect them. Why is that skill important? I've already indicated one reason, because in the future, you're going to be working with a group of people who have informational uncertainty about rationality. They don't know everything and can't process it, and you're going to be the one that says, hey, we could do, and then you remember how we do this, and you do it, and you find, and it actually works. The power is just vast in multiplying value. But the second is, because you chose a technology, and basically, there's a ton of informational uncertainty around it. And so in our lab on Thursday, that's going to be you guys create a current reality tree around your technology so that a week from today you can make a presentation and explain what it is. Now, it doesn't mean that once all the presentations are done, we can't realize what we learned from group 1, group 3 learned from group 2, etc. This is everybody learning together. So, but each group's going to do one of these. So watching how this is done and doing it and understanding the principles for why it works, that's what we're doing here. This is the do, look, learn thing that we're doing. Okay, so everybody got 3, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go through them and just hold your hands up. So smartphone negatives. Okay. Lack of critical thinking in society. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 18. Linear career assumptions. 1. Okay. Increasing distance between rich and poor. Study procrastination. The experience hiring hypocrisy. 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm just going to interrupt here for 2 seconds. Because 14 is lower than 18, it means we're not going to delve into that. So I'm going to tell you one of the ways that you crack that problem. What you do is you have some professor who says, you have experience. And they write a letter. Okay? And because we're doing do, look, learn, I'm one of those resources. And you shouldn't be shy about asking for such a letter that says, oh yeah, they took on this and they did that, and they can do this, and because you will have skills, and it's beyond what somebody, so you can have 5 years of doing the same thing 10 times, or you can have 5 years of doing 10 different things. And sometimes the 1 year of doing 10 different things is even more valuable than the 5 years of doing the same thing 10 times. And I can write those letters that make those points. Okay? So how do you move forward in a career? You have people who back you. Why am I saying that? Because that's the goes around, comes around thing. How does anybody get their position? When I was in the 5-year hypocrisy loop, somebody had to write a letter. And they did. Okay, just saying. So we pay it forward. Since we're not going to be discussing it, I just needed to make the point. That's one of the critical ways that you use to crack that problem. Okay, so back to the voting. Student debt crisis. Rising cost of higher ed. Ineffective inefficiencies of government. Yeah, we all know that's the case, right? Actually, and the framers actually made it inefficient, right? 3 branches that have to agree, and one's cross-checking the other. Efficient wasn't what they set up for, right? So just saying. Social media negatives. Barriers to economic mobility. Even James is he's saying burnout due to overwork. Okay, so yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're doing lack of critical thinking in society.
Segment 5 shows how situation statements are generated. How an analysis group generates these statements about a topic by identifying elements of the real world that are part of the situation and then listing them using declarative language. Through segment 5, we can see demonstrated for us how the group members together can generate a more complete list of situation statements than could any one member by themselves.
I'm going to put this up here for now, and it's going to go onto the, we'll go onto the overhead eventually. Okay, so what does the situation statement sound like? Well, you got a list of them for the MM company, right? It takes too long to quote. Customers aren't happy. This is that, this is that, this is that, this is that. It doesn't have to be negative, it just has to be declarative. This says, what's the situation? Okay, so we're talking about lack of critical thinking in society.
Society isn't proactive.
You say, let's just say people aren't
Or people,
proactive,
okay, individuals.
okay? Yeah, so, just coaching you, right, as to how you would facilitate this. Notice that Travis and I had a little interchange, and he's okay with my saying people, okay? Because society's just vague enough that we wouldn't know what to do with that, but we could just tune it to the point that people are not proactive.
Confirmation bias.
Okay? There is confirmation bias. Okay, so everybody who's not a psychologist, what's a confirmation bias? It means that everybody, we only listen to the things that the people who agree with us say. And the people who don't agree with us, so it's like the classic, right? I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying this is the classic way that confirmation bias works. Okay? Conservatives think liberals are immoral. And liberals think conservatives are stupid. Okay? And that's just confirmation bias. So you just go on and on and on and on. You just watch one network and it goes stupid, stupid, stupid. And the other one goes immoral, immoral, immoral. Just saying. Okay? So, there's confirmation bias. Okay? I'm not teaching you what your philosophy ought to be, right? I'm just, in some respects, making it interesting enough that we can actually get through this skill. Okay, so keeping going. Confirmation bias.
Reducing creativity.
Okay. Creativity is, may I say, decreasing? Otherwise, there has to be somebody to reduce the creativity, and we're going to find that out when we connect. Yeah, Joseph.
What's the access to information?
There is increased access, okay. Increasing, or there is just a great access to information?
I just said constant. I just said constant. Just
Okay.
constantly
Reducing information overload.
Yeah. Increasing access.
Constant access to info, and then you can say info overload. Okay, so, 2 seconds. There's a fan going here, and so it's just enough white noise that sometimes I need you to just shout over top of the fan. Okay, so go ahead, Matthew.
Information preconception. That's kind of confirmation bias.
Okay, but it could lead to it, right? So,
Okay.
okay, so people have preconceived ideas, right? Notice I'm checking with Matthew, even though I said it just slightly differently. What I'm trying to do is to put it into terms that
can really, if they end up being a constraint, we could do something with them. Like,
Increases in anti-intellectualism. What's that? So like.
You know, like smart people.
Yeah. Like don't trust.
anti-intellectualism.
That sounds.
Yeah, so somebody called the whole deal with the pull-out and the turkey thing as like information-free foreign policy or something, right? So, disrespect for professionals.
People just don't care. For the most part.
Now, can I just follow that, Sterling, with the don't care about what, right? Because it's really that they don't care about critical thinking. They're not even thinking about critical thinking because they don't care about,
Like increasing their intellectual capabilities. Most people would rather just sit on their couch and watch TV instead of trying to actively learn.
okay,
They don't value education.
Yeah.
Lack of motivation.
okay. Some people don't value education. Yeah, Amanda.
Social influences.
And their social influences that what?
That shape people's ideas, they don't really think for themselves.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's more than peer pressure, it's really social pressure decreases independent thinking. That's, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're thinking? Okay. So social. Well, you want another one, guys? Let me see if I've got another one that's gonna work. What happens is with that air moving there, it dries the ends of these things out, so. Just carefully use the ends of water. Not working. Okay, so we're not gonna get it locked, it works. Thanks for your patience. Okay, how about that, guys? Social. Okay, and it's,
Jericho.
Jericho, thank you.
There's a lack of dialogue across, I guess, ideological lines.
All right, sticking my hand in there. Yeah, Gage?
So people just believe anything they see, especially on the internet.
Yes, Wes.
Like in the way we grew up in our educational system, it doesn't really allow for critical thinking. It's just standardized tests. This is right. You got, where's your choices? Pick which one you think is the best. Essentially.
So I'm gonna say standardized tests minimize critical thinking practice.
So maybe like society's icons don't encourage like higher education / critical thinking. So like turning back to social media, all these influencers are just showing off their body, and these guys didn't go to college. It's just like showing pictures of their butt, and people want to aspire to be them. And so like as a society, we're just like, oh, these people are awesome, and they have so much money. There's no point of getting an education if I can just show off my butt.
Yeah. I'm gonna say two things. You didn't say it quite, but symbols bash critical thinking.
Yeah, Amanda?
Educational imbalance.
What do you mean by that?
Some people have more access to better education than others.
Okay.
It's like unequal access.
Liberal arts programs being cut from underfunded school districts.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna, Mira, right? Is it by?
Marine.
Okay, Marie, so never would have gotten that right. Thank you.
Some jobs kind of just require you to execute simple tasks.
Can I put one up, like information technology substitutes for critical thinking? Is that what you were gonna say?
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay, so let's do that.
Yeah, Mike.
I know in certain jobs or groups or organizations, like speaking out or going against the grain is kind of looked down upon or gets you in trouble or something like that.
Yeah, so if the storm turns against you, ouch. Yeah,
Maybe that certain groups are provocative simply for the sake of being provocative, so they kind of just throw the pot.
yeah, and that minimizes critical thinking because,
So I think sometimes
I think you're on
when
something.
you're provocative just for the sake of being provocative, it kind of can either, if you have a good argument, sometimes it can lessen the value of it just because you're like, oh, you're just saying that because, you know, you're just trying to start something or, you know, just kind of.
Okay, so you're really saying that the provocative competes with critical thinking. In other words,
I think the unnecessarily provocative, like a provocative without maybe, or provocative for the sake of being provocative.
okay, so provocative dilutes critical thinking? Would that be more what you're?
I think, well, like what comes to mind is like there's people like Milo Yiannopoulos who just kind of stir the pot just to make people angry, and it kind of dilutes the value of the things that they're saying.
Oh, okay.
Having meaningful discussion.
Yeah, it's just like shitposting.
I use those words, meaningful discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Provocation diminishes provocative. Anything else? Yeah, John?
Maybe, I could be wrong, but I think people have gone towards more, when discussing or looking at problems, using more of an emotional appeal, that pathos appeal, instead of looking at issues from a logical standpoint.
Okay, so
Yeah. Or
Emotion.
Or even ethos, to a certain extent.
becoming more important than logic.
Pathos.
Anything about human nature in general that's driving all of this? Like, people want, yeah,
Humans always seek the laziest, most simple solution possible. That is a great thing. It's what makes us such an incredibly powerful civilization, but it does diminish critical thinking when you don't have to think a lot of times. You can just pick a simpler solution.
I don't know, you look at a lazy person and think,
yeah, so
I know that's.
they love the simplistic solution, right?
Boils down to like us as a society, if we just, like if you see people that are getting by and they're not critical thinkers, it's like, geez, why am I working so hard? Why am I being such a critical thinker if they're doing fine?
Okay, so non-CTs are getting by, okay. Okay, so during the break, BJ was asking me, so what if you don't get all of them? You know, does it compromise the value? Well, the point is, there's so much uncertainty out there that the extent to which you've got a set of issues and figured out what to do about those mean that you can decrease in informational uncertainty where others can't, and as a result, you can create new value. I mean, it's just like you don't have to eliminate informational uncertainty, you just reduce it enough that some of the inherent value that's in human relationships is free to emerge because you were able to do that. Okay, so that's what this technique does. And a group that's different than you may come up with a list that's not exactly this same list, and the constraints may be not exactly the ones that you choose, but for the way they view the world, that constraint's going to help them to decrease informational uncertainty. Because you still can't know everything, and you can't process it. But if you know a whole lot more and you process it, informational uncertainty goes down. And that's why this technique, so is this the way we're doing it with an overhead bubble charts and whatever, taking an hour and a half to grind through it? So like somebody here who's in computer science, create an AI that just asks you all the questions and puts it in, that's it all. It'd just be way better, okay? It could assist your mind. But at this point, this is all we have, right? And the Crosby Institute still charges $10,000 a day per person to teach you how to do this, okay? And they take companies in and do that. Okay, so what we have is we have a list. Is this the complete list? Probably not. Is it a sufficient list? Maybe. As we start connecting them, we may in fact find something that's a part of the situation that we hadn't really put on the list, and at that point we'll just put it on the list. So there's no inherent barrier in that.
Segment 6 is actually the current reality tree construction demonstration. How an analysis group uses the underlying system because of A, B happens, to connect situation statements. It's important to get the causal direction right, because of A, B happens, and to challenge the connections in a kind of group self-auditing process. And then be sure not to put an arrow into a bubble that's trivial, lest a potentially key constraint be missed. You'll see how that happens in the demonstration. Through segment 6, we can see how the group members can identify the key constraints for future focus.
It'll be just a little larger when we put it on the... Okay, so what I'm going to do is now put a piece of paper right here that I can start connecting these with... So this is dead weight boring time. Absolute yawner. Everybody start yawning because dang, right? That's what we're going to do. BJ, would you be able to come up and... So what happens is for me to draw the stuff on the bubble chart and check off who's done what. Okay, so this is the... And it only works sometimes. And here's the wet corner if you want to stick it in because you have to keep it rolling. But essentially, VJ, just check it off next to the number. Don't cross the number out because we'll need those numbers. Okay? And the other thing VJ is going to do is when you raise your hand, he's going to kind of try and keep track of who's next and who's next because I'm going to be trying to draw the bubbles. Now, we'll kind of see how that works. The idea is, if you recall, because of A, B happens. And any two that are one leads to the other are open. Now, you will watch me just double check this, as should you. Because the other part about knowing everything is that if we don't agree about it, we're kind of self-auditing. So we're just kind of building our own capability set as we go. Okay? And you'll watch how we do that so that we can get the connections that are pretty well accepted by the supercomputer. Okay, so what you're doing is you're looking at those over there.
So you're saying you want us to go, starting with number one, because people are not proactive, society, or there's a lack of critical thinking in society?
You could start with number one, but you could start with 15 because of 15, 14 happens, or because of 15, 3 happens, or you don't have to start anywhere, just any two that you see connected, but that logic, we can map it, and then we'll just start building. Now, it'll look like a mess, but it'll actually do the job. And the job, once again, is to ID which bubbles don't have any arrows going into them because they're driving the whole mess. yeah, sure.
So I thought because the liberal arts programs are being cut, so that creativity is decreasing because of that.
Okay, so if what you do is you tell me the number, so because of, what number is that?
17 liberal arts programs being cut.
Liberal arts programs. Okay, then,
Then creativity is decreasing.
and that's number what?
That's number 3.
Okay. See, so now, and you're gonna check out, once it works, you're gonna check off 17 and 3. Yeah,
Another one that will tie to the creativity decreasing is the standardized testing one.
okay. So, and that's which number, Katie?
I cannot read that.
Yeah, tough deal.
12.
Okay. 12, standardized testing leads to creativity decrease. So we've got Matthew back there as soon as,
I would say number 4 that we have constant access to info, and number 1 are related with constant access to info causing people to not be proactive.
okay, so constant access is what number, Matthew?
Sorry, it was 4 to 1.
4. And 1's what again?
People are not proactive.
I thought possibly that unequal access to education could also lead to decreases in creativity.
So then, you think that,
Okay, and what number was that, Mike? Unequal access, 60.
That was nice.
Also saying constant access to info, it makes people just not care about thinking necessarily because they can just go and type it into their phone. They don't think about it.
And that was which one, Wes? Don't care.
Don't care is number 8.
I don't know, it's kind of crazy, but like, in some ways, if like we really like on that, like,
James.
It's 1 to 23, so people are not proactive, so it leads to laziness.
Leads to what?
People are lazy.
Would that be going from 1 to 23, or would that be going from 23 to 1? That's what I would argue.
Well, I was gonna do that, but yeah, it's 23 to 1, yeah, that's definitely the right way to do it. No, you're right, that's what I was.
No,
So, we just had this cool discussion that went on back here as to which direction the arrow goes.
It's 23 to 1, so like, because people are lazy, it creates the people not being proactive.
So two-headed arrows are possible. Could you make the other case and be happy with it?
Yes,
Both things, so they're interacting all the time, right?
but no, those double-headed thing.
Well, that's kind of why they do it like so we'll have the double-headed arrow here. Okay, so we have, who's next?
I'd argue, number 9, with some people don't value education, connects to 16, which is uneven access to education.
And what number was that?
That was number 9.
Do you think it's a two-headed arrow?
I think it could be, yeah. Maybe there's a line leading into standardized testing from the value on education.
So this is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Do you think the standardized testing makes everybody sick and tired of education too? I mean, that's another double-headed arrow, right? So, yeah. I mean, that turned me off, just saying, you know.
People believe anything they see. I feel like people are lazy. Because people are lazy, they believe anything they see. I mean, you can argue against that, but
That's kind of the result of
I think,
And what number was that, Julie?
11.
I think social pressure decreases independent thinking because speaking out gets punished.
Yeah, I was standing by that fan. Social,
Social pressure decreases independent thinking because speaking out gets punished.
so three things.
Well, it's
I'm sorry. So which two connect?
13 and 20.
Neither of them are up there yet, right? Okay, so we're gonna have 13 and 20. And
Social pressure decreases independent thinking.
and 20 is?
Speaking out gets punished.
It goes this way is what you're thinking?
And then maybe what ties into speaking out gets punished is number 18, some jobs only require simple tasks.
Okay, so you think that,
Because some jobs only require simple tasks, speaking out is punished.
okay, and that number,
Us, 18.
read it to me one more time, please.
Some jobs only require simple tasks.
So,
24 would go to 23.
Are either of those up there yet?
23 is. So non-critical thinkers are getting by okay, which in return makes people lazy. You'd probably go with.
And that was number what, Gage?
24 is the non-critical thinkers are getting by okay. That goes to number 23, which is already up there. People are lazy.
Okay,
Jericho. So, 19 IT support or substitutes for critical thinking. That kind of leads into 18, and it's kind of led from the informational maybe. The one saying that.
and Jericho, that number was what?
18.
It's just-
IT substitute for critical thinking. 19.
Oh, that's not. And that's causing some jobs to only have to be simple.
You could say, you could make the argument that IT institution is also making non-critical thinkers get by okay. It's not a big area. All of it.
19 to 24 is what you were seeing, right, Shane? Okay, so the idea is that we're trying to get every one of those that isn't checked figure out what it connects to. And then, after that, all we have to do is to be sure that any connections that are up there, we haven't missed.
My question was, when you're doing this with an organization, can you backpedal and kind of add things to the list, or is it?
Absolutely, you bet. Yeah, because what's gonna happen, Amanda, is that as people start thinking about it, they'll realize that there is a situation we really haven't specified yet. But if we're gonna know everything, we better put it up there. Okay, so is there something you think we've missed so far, or?
No, it's just.
Yeah, okay, so, great point. And absolutely, yeah, encourage people to come up with the things that we might have missed. John Bobby,
I would say that
way louder.
I would say that too, that confirmation bias leads to 10, a lack of dialogue across ideological.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put, neither of those are up there, right? Okay, and it's number 2 leads to 10? 2 leads to 10. Please read 2.
There is confirmation bias.
And leads to 10, which says?
Lack of dialogue over ideological lines.
So I think it's already up there, number 19. So because IT substitutes critical thinking, there's an information overload. Number 5. I don't know, maybe.
Do you want us to put, so,
That's not the,
It's, yeah, 5's not up there, so I'd say maybe that connects to number 19.
I think 10 relates rather well with 7. The fact that lack of dialogue sort of leads to anti-intellectualism.
okay, so 7 is what's not up there yet?
Correct.
7 says, BJ?
Yes.
Get up, people.
So symbols bashing creative thinking could also lead to decreases in creative thinking.
And what was that number, Mike?
15.
And that was symbol bashing?
engage. 15 we connect to 21. 21 is not up there yet, which is basically provocateurs, decrease meaningful discussion.
Decrease what, Gage?
Meaningful discussion.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting really close, right? We've only got 6 and 22. Oh, and 14, thank you.
Yeah, let's say 14 will connect to 21, or vice versa. Influencers, neither of those are on there. Influencers don't emphasize critical thinking. And
So just, first of all, influencers, right? That's what number, Gage?
14
Okay,
don't influence or emphasize critical thinking.
and that leads to,
Emotion becoming more important than logic.
so that's also up there, right?
Yeah,
Not up there. And that's number what?
22.
Jared, did you have something?
No.
Okay.
Uh,
So can I just circle back to Gage? I'm just so sorry, but I just want to be really explicit. So influencers not emphasizing critical thinking is it because emotions are becoming more important that influencers can get away, or is it the influencers?
I think it's a double-sided arrow,
Okay.
but I think that because influencers are influencing people, they're encouraging
Sure.
the lack of logic.
But the fact that there is emotion means that provocateurs can get on with
Exactly.
what they're doing, so it's. Did you think there was anything to do with provocateurs in that linkage, Gage? I thought I heard you say something about influencers, emotion, or provocateurs.
Yeah, I would say 14 would probably go to 21. Influencers don't emphasize critical thinking, which would go to provocateurs, decrease meaningful discussion. 22 emotion.
But 22 can feed the provocateurs too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So go back to this triangle, because essentially what you have is emotions becoming more important, and if it's a two-headed arrow, it may be something that's really important. And so if you're running a meeting like this and you're getting to the point where things are almost all posted, you want to be sure that you're not eliminating what could be a major constraint for a trivial reason. And so I'm asking Gage, but all of you along with him, to audit that two-headed arrow that's over there between 14 and 22, okay? Because if we take off this head, what we get is emotion driving influencers and provocateurs, and we're just wondering if the influencers not emphasizing critical thinking is really causing that humans have emotion more than logic. And I'm questioning that. I think the emotion is what's really there that provides the fuel for both of those.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go with me on that, which everybody else is auditing, right, then it's going to be, right now, in the world that we have, emotion really, really matters more than it ever has. And that's a biggie in terms of critical thinking.
I'd say so.
Okay, so I'm going to take off that arrow there, because this is likely one of those critical ones. But you can't just push your own agenda when you're the facilitator. You need to go, as I did with Gage, back and invite everybody else to cross-check that, because it ends up becoming the best analysis of all 30-some of us. Okay? So thank you. What's left?
Oh, I was thinking that because people have preconceived ideas, which is 6, that links into number 10, that I think, which is just kind of like dialogue. Those are those things.
Okay. So Wes is still in play.
Wes was into.
I was just trying to find a way where we could connect all this big glob to this small four group over here. So I was thinking like influencers could possibly cause like a confirmation bias in a way, or confirmation bias ties into influencers in such a way confirmation bias, like you see an influencer do something that ties into your confirmation bias in a way or another way. I'm not too exactly sure, but I was trying to find
So may I join the conversation you're trying to do? Hey, so confirmation bias is something that's just sort of like part of the psyche. And so what if we skipped it? Because it could be one of the main drivers of why there's a lack of critical thinking. But what if the influencers were actually jumping over confirmation bias and going actually to number 10, the lack of dialogue? That's exactly what influencers would be doing, would be putting that barrier into place. Then you can connect the two clusters, but you don't eliminate what's really part of human nature that, I mean, probably going to be a constraint and one that we can't change. So,
we connect 14 to 10.
that's what I'm suggesting, that we just say there's influencers, yeah, and that's how that cluster gets driven, by influencers, but also by confirmation bias. And, you know, people having preconceived notions. So, you know, the question is, does having a preconceived notion mean that you have confirmation bias? No, because confirmation bias is a thinking process, and a preconceived notion is the result of that. So perhaps you could say confirmation bias is leading to the people having preconceived ideas, and they preconceive them and they reinforce them by with confirmation bias. We're okay with that? Okay, so. So,
Holly, did you have something?
I think I was gonna go with connecting 4 to 5, just having the info access leads to the, like having the overload. So it's like 4 to 5.
okay, so I'm looking for 4 and 5. Oh, here's 5. And 4 is hiding where?
Like it's in the middle
Oh.
area.
Yeah, so that's the kind of connection that actually allows us to have a little more richness in why everything's working the way that it works. Any more of those connections, kind of like what Allie saw. Okay, that's a kind of creativity that's different than the creativity that it took for us to get that onto this. Okay, so
I feel like 20, which is speaking up gets punished, can go into number 10, which with the lack of dialogue over ideas as a result of getting punished or speaking out.
yeah. So you don't talk. Yeah. Better to be silent and be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Not my statement. Any other connections that you see here? Okay, so Vereen. Ain is Ain. Okay, so just forgive me, but I'm learning too. Okay, Vereen. Okay, so I'm getting better. Please.
I thought 18 would connect to 1. That some jobs require simple tasks, and that leads to people not being proactive.
So 18, and where's 1 living? Oh, right down there. Yeah. Okay, so that's another one of those creative leaps.
In segment 7, we identify the constraints. You look over the CRT that's been created to identify the bubbles with no arrows coming in. Put uppercase letters next to these as constraints and separate these into fixed constraints, that is, states of nature that are not likely to change in our analysis timeframe. Through segment 7, we can see how group members can analyze the key constraints to identify the variable constraints for future focus.
So now we're going to do the next thing, which is to look for the bubbles that don't have any arrows going into them. What you would do if you were leading this would be to be sure, as you put like a letter A, B, C, or D beside it, that there really isn't something that's driving it, that's sitting up there. Like connecting everything else that may or may not be connected isn't the main object. It's really identifying the constraints that are driving the system of interlocking, interrelated situations. Okay, so did I say that clearly enough? You're just looking for the bubbles with no arrows going into it. Okay, Melanie?
So then like 22 about emotions and happening.
So where did you start? You started right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put an A beside that, right? Is there anything that's causing emotions to be more important than logic that's on here? It's sort of like the way that the entire system's working right now. The entire media industry is about it. It's all that. So it's just how the values of society, we would call those the institutions of society, the common beliefs and understandings that define our social fabric. Right? So A is one. Any of the others? Yeah, Bonner?
Social pressure decreases independent thinking.
Okay, so social pressure decreases independent thinking. Has that ever been any different? Yeah, probably not, right? So this is us just challenging. Okay, so B. Okay. I've seen constant information. Oh, Mike, where were you?
It looks like confirmation bias also doesn't have an arrow to it.
Okay, and that's sort of the way that human beings are, and since the dawn of time. Okay, and I was looking down here at constant information access. Okay, so symbol bashing. Is symbol bashing really a state of nature? If not, what's actually driving that? And you might look for one of the bubbles that has an A, B, C, or D, or one of the things that follow from that to say, what's causing symbol bashing? Do we remember what we meant by that? What was the number again? 15. Symbols bash critical thinking. So, what's going on? Well, there's certain things that are portrayed as, the cool person is the one who doesn't think critically. The influencers. So, what do you think then, BJ? Do you think we could connect the...
So I think that the influencers don't value critical thinking is also going into them bashing. Don't emphasize it, so then they bash it.
Okay, now is everybody okay with that? Basically, it could be a state of nature. Every time somebody bashes our symbols, we stop thinking critically. However, that's not the case because, just think of simple historical examples. The British were bashing the colonies, and the colonies said, well, right? So I think it's probably okay to put that arrow there and not have the symbol bashing, decreasing the critical thinking as being. Okay, so. Any other, Julie?
IT also doesn't have an arrow going into it.
Warmer, colder, colder?
IT substitutes for critical thinking. It's right above B.
Right above what?
B.
Oh. Yeah. Anything else?
Wes, did you have some?
I was thinking like the emotions of humans, whatever, I can't really read what things number 23. People are, I don't know, not 23, it's very far left one over here.
In segment 8, we explain how a constraints analysis is constructed in group work, including a lab where instructor input is possible. So, little hint, try to get as far as you can before the lab so that the instructor inputs are of highest value, and then turned into a group presentation for the assignment. Through segment 8, we can see how to look down the road to future classwork in ways that might be productive.
The time to bashing symbols, because when you're mad, you're gonna go bash something, obviously, if you're against it.
Oh, so 22 would drive 15 too?
I believe so.
So, here's a decision point. So I could hand out the change plan assignment and you could do it and leave early. We could have that break that we promised and come back and do the change plan assignment and still leave a bit early. I'm pretty much open to however you want to play this. Change plan assignment would take you 5 to 7 minutes. Want to just push through?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Push through, and then what we're gonna do when we get back on Thursday is 3 things, okay? The first thing, I promised that we, at least that I could get more input by asking you just a little about yourself, what your major is, where you're from, and what you're hoping to get out of your STEM, right? So I'd like to do that. I'd also like to show you so the term that educators use is rubric, but it really means how am I going to be judged? Okay, so maybe by now you've given presentations and then you've gotten a grade on your presentation and somebody says, well, it's because you did this or because you did that or whatever, and you go, well, if I'd have known, I'd have done that differently. Okay, like dang. So what's on Blackboard for every one of these presentations are like the 10 criteria that the presentation needs to have so that you're all ready to roll and you can ask me any question before the presentation. Now remember, the presentation for constraints, unrelated novelty, skill 2, for adventure template, skill 3, all those presentations, and skill 4, the transaction solutions, all those roll up into being the key slides that you've developed for your final presentation. And you already have that assignment and you know what that is. Okay, so that's really what we're doing with these individual assignments, is just essentially preparing for the final assignment. Because, as I mentioned, I'm not judging that assignment. It's going to be people from the community and people who understand what's up to say, have these guys excellently assessed whether this idea, product or service, which you don't have yet, but you'll create, can create new value units. Okay, so I want to give you that rubric, okay, and then The third thing is to answer any questions that you have about constraints analysis, because primarily it's time in your breakout rooms where you're doing the constraints analysis that you will report a week from today in the presentations. Okay, so we're kind of getting used to how the groove's going to work, and this is the only time we're having a lab in the class before the presentations. After that, it's just a skill, and then the presentation, and then another skill, and then the presentation. Except for the final, where we'll have 2 labs to be sure that all the questions get answered, because I need to coach you to the point that everybody who wants to can have an A when the panel shows up to do the judging. Okay. And then from a class business standpoint, I'm going to bring the New Venture template workbook that you've signed in and paid for, and all you need to do is just on your phone show me that receipt so that I can give you the password to the expert assistant software. It actually does run cool algorithms to make comparisons that just make the kind of analysis that we would have to do for NVT, like this, that we have to do for this. I actually computerized that one, so it's easier to do. Haven't figured out how to computerize this. Okay, so just backing up to summarize where we are and why we're doing what we're doing. Does anybody have a question or need clarification? Or okay, so there's a quiz after class today. Reason why I'm wandering over here, because I'm going to double check myself to be sure that anything that, oh, and VJ,
Yeah.
hey, can we? Okay, by the way, I'm going to post all of this stuff on Blackboard as soon as I can scan it. Okay? Okay, so I'm just looking through to be sure that I covered everything. Okay, so we're going to do the change plan.
So this is segment 9, our last segment, and it explains how the change plan approach is a foundation for future work. So here we explain how a constraints analysis can be utilized as the basis for a change plan. This is important because change plans are the core mechanism used to structure the unstructured problems of technology commercialization. And if you get good at this change plan, then you'll be a natural with the plans generated by the next 2 skills that are then wrapped into the 4th skill, Transaction Solutions Matrix, TSM analysis. Through segment 9, we turn concept into action.
So again, this isn't for credit, but it is for enabling you to have the underlying logic for your presentation. Okay, so this is essentially preparing for that. Okay, and there are 3 pieces to it. What are the constraints? Okay, so this isn't some deep thing. It's going to be A, B, C, D, E. Okay, that's it. Okay, the possibilities for change. Now, that's how the layperson thinks about it. What you're thinking is, out of A, B, C, D, and E, which ones are fixed and which ones are variable. Now, each of us has our own imagination. And so for some, things will be fixed and others variable. But for others, different ones will be fixed and different ones will be variable because you can see a way for them to vary. Okay? So it's not that they're inherently correct, fixed, or variable, but you need to identify out of A, B, C, and D what the possibilities for change are, translated, which ones are variable. And then, answer how this change how it can be enabled by innovation and changing constraints. Now, why is that important? Because that's the springboard. When you do this constraints analysis on our technology, that's going to be the place where you springboard into the kind of product or service that has to be created to solve the problems that are involved in society with regard to this technology. One more time, this third area is the place where you can practice the skill of what it is to enable change. The way you enable change is that you do stuff. You start programs, you create products, you create services, etc. And that's what our next skill is going to be about. But we've got to do a constraints analysis to resolve the informational uncertainty about our technology. So that's pretty abstract, and on Thursday, we're going to meet together first to talk about that, but then you start your constraints analysis actually in your breakout rooms. And the idea is to get as much of that done before you have to leave, because meeting outside of class is really difficult. I'm going to ask you, by the way, to give me a list of group members in each team and cell phone numbers, not because I need them inherently, but there's always some crisis that something happens and I need to text somebody. Okay? I don't even know who it's going to be. But we'll do that on Thursday. Okay? So this is the change plan. Just put your name at the top. Okay? I want every one of them handed in today so that I can look at the extent to which each of us has fully absorbed the ideas behind this skill. Okay? While you're doing that, I'm going to start handing out. I'll be back.
In this video, you have had the opportunity to view 9 segments that enable you to see use of the constraints analysis skill in action. You have seen why such a skill is needed, because informational uncertainty occurs where we can't know everything, nor can we process it. Constraints analysis addresses both problems. You have seen how situation statements are generated by a group. This is the help to know part. You have seen how situation statements are to be connected to construct a current reality tree using the underlying logic because of A, B happens. You also saw how the constraints can be identified. They're the bubbles with no arrows going into them. You then observed how the constraints were divided into fixed and variable. And lastly, you saw a brief explanation of how a change plan can be developed from a further analysis of the variable constraints. With this constraints analysis skill, you are enabled to take a technology that's an invention but is not yet commercialized and address one of the 3 reasons it's still on the shelf, that is, informational uncertainty. By using constraints analysis, thereby knowing more and processing it, we reduce informational uncertainty and increase value. As I mentioned previously, this release of value is possible because there's inherent value in human relationships, most of which does not emerge due to informational, relational, and resource uncertainty. Thus, when we reduce informational uncertainty, the inherent weighting value naturally emerges. One more thing. As you practice this skill, try to envision yourself as the leader of a problem-solving group in an organization. In the future, knowing and remembering this skill may be helpful at a key tipping point in your career. All the best in your studies. Thanks for watching this video.